Good evening, and welcome to the great debate. And we have three very, very solid debaters here with us today who I'd like to introduce to you. One is a Vice President for the Agency Markets and Director of Business Process Management for Liberty Mutual Insurance, and that is Kirk Cohurst. I hope I pronounced that correctly.
Perfect.
And welcome. And we also have the Chief Executive Officer for the IT Investment and Development in Hungary. And let me see if I can do this correctly. Csaba Kilian.
Very good.
Welcome very much. And also joining us for the IT Development and Investment from a country a little bit south of Hungary, in Egypt, who also joined us for the Executive Roundtable. We have Hossam Megahed, and we really appreciate having you guys here very, very much. So what we want to talk about is to determine whether or not outsourcing is the best strategy, or if there are other alternatives. And so to get right to it, Kirk, I thought I'd start with you, if that's okay.
Sure.
And you know, what I'm wondering is, you know, if you could really begin to talk about, you know, how you see what is for you moving beyond obvious cost, the reasons to outsource, and what kind of benefits are you seeing from your company at this point?
Thank you. Yeah, I think, you know, we probably heard some of them throughout the last day and a half. I think, you know, a lot of people talk about labor arbitrage. I think if you're just going into it to try to save on labor costs, there are probably easier ways to do it. Things like shared service centers, looking at process improvement. So some of the tactics we've talked about over the last day and a half. I think if you look beyond kind of those obvious things, you know, there is the notion of entering a market and leveraging outsourcing as a market entry strategy. Also looking at it as a way to really variabilize your cost structure. So for us individually, and actually most of my comments will be around a strategy that we executed at Safeco Insurance, which was acquired by Liberty Mutual about 18 months ago. So I'm actually in the process of bringing work back on shore now. So I've lived the full life cycle.
So you're actually backsourcing work
correct
onshore when
yes.
due to the purchase of Conseco?
Purchase of Safeco. Yep.
Safeco, yes.
Yep. So some of the things we looked at when we made the decision was we did want to be able to variabilize our cost structure. We also realized that there were some issues with attracting the right kind of talent and being able to find talent, especially in the IT space and analytics space. We weren't able to meet the demand that we had for certain types of knowledge, or couldn't find folks who are really interested in taking up some of maybe the more archaic IT languages. So those were some of the reasons we went offshore. So.
Okay. So Mr. Kilian, if you were working with someone like Kurt, okay, who was trying to figure out what to do and where to go, and he wasn't in Hungary, how would you go ahead and convince him to go there?
Well, I really believe that Hungary, if somebody is looking for the region, number one is, I think, labor, and number two is labor, and number three is labor. But I would like to emphasize the labor quality and efficiency and innovativeness of the people, openness of the people, I would like to really emphasize. At the same time, the Hungarians are very very stable, not so much mobile, which could be an incentive maybe or advantage for companies. The attrition rate, for example, in Hungary is relatively low in this industry. It's around 10–15%, and practically, I think those companies who are working in the European continent, let's say, using languages, we have a very multicultural language environment. Most of the companies who are working in the country, they use 15, 20, or IBM more than 25 foreign languages. It's compulsory to speak minimum 2 foreign languages for young graduates now in Hungary. And of course, there is a substantial cost saving, which used to be also important.
Well, I think it still is. I think it still is. But when you look at Hungary, okay, you know, our distinguished colleague here from Egypt, which is a little bit further south, climate's a little bit warmer from what I understand. How would you say, why would you come to Egypt, say, versus Hungary? I'm just trying to create a little controversy as we're here today.
We enjoy competing.
I'm not trying to set you guys against each other, really not.
I would like to go to Hungary, by the way.
Actually, the food, I think, is really good there.
Yes. And by the way, I flew here with 16 hours of number of flights. The flight, I think you flew something like 12 hours. So I flew more than you. Okay. Egypt, actually, if we are talking about Egypt, what we will highlight is not our talks, but we would highlight very much quotes and talks from third-party consultants that's highlighted Egypt. And an example for that, in 2008, by the UK Association of Outsourcing, we have been chosen Egypt as #1 outsourcing destination worldwide. Okay. A.T. Kearney put Egypt in their index of the global index as number 13 worldwide in 2007, but the better news that we have been jumped 7 positions, so we have been number 6 last year in 2009.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and number 6, that's after leaders like India and China. And our position, we were just discussing that we are not competing with India and China. We are collaborating, especially with India, very much, because of the sizes. We are 80 million population. India is 1.3 something billion. So
there's a few people there.
There's a few people, few more people over there. And talking about, I agree that people and talent and knowledge is #1. And we have, by numbers, we have each year something like 300,000 university graduates. And we say at least 15% of those are ready to work immediately in the IT outsourcing or business process outsourcing, along with other factors like geopolitical stability, geographic locations, languages as well. So this comprises our value proposition.
Okay. So back to you, Kirk. I guess, you know, there's a method to the madness here, okay? You know, obviously when you begin to look at what your sourcing decisions are, and I think, you know, the folks out here in the audience, we'd love to hear their comments too as we go through this, is choosing the right vendors. So as you're doing that, how important is the locations that those vendors are doing business in to you versus you picking the location where you want them to be?
Yeah, I think, you know, our journey, when we set up the Business Process Outsourcing Center of Excellence, we'd already done piecemeal a few bits of IT outsourcing, and some of that was onshore and some of it was in India. So we believe strongly in the synergy between BPO and ITO and having that with the same provider when possible so that you can gain efficiency. And as your provider identifies process improvements, that they can actually influence some small automation improvements on your behalf as part of that. So our journey started in India, but as we looked at providers to include in our RFP process, because we didn't just automatically go to our existing providers, we did have competition. We did favor India because we were already there, and we felt like this was about 5-6 years ago. At that point, it was fairly mature market, and the the legal environment was fairly well understood. And so we kind of understood the playing field there. But we did talk to our providers to understand kind of what their global strategies were, because our view was, you know, being an insurance company, we're fairly risk averse, right? So we didn't really need to go to new geographies ourselves. We aligned ourselves with partners who were globalizing in their own right, and we looked to them to take us to new geographies.
Okay. Now, is your business at Liberty Mutual, does it take you to where you have, you are a global business where you actually do business in Europe, you do business in the Middle East, you do business in Asia as well?
Yeah, we have 4 main operating companies. The part of the organization I'm with is Agency Markets, and that's strictly US based. But we do have an international market as well. It's about $6 billion in annual revenue, and it's a number of small operating companies throughout the globe.
So how do you play the triage? Okay, so you have, and I'd be very interested in opening this up to the audience if anyone wants to make a comment, is you sit there as a global company, okay, and there are certain countries where you can offshore to from the United States that are easier than countries within Europe. Or that, you know, and there's also the willingness in terms of a different time zone. So how do you play that triage? And, you know, those of you all here, I mean, how many of you all do offshoring in places other than India or in Eastern Europe or in the Middle East, et cetera? And, you know, what thought process did you have to get there? You, Marty? No, who's on? Would you like to answer first?
I would like to comment about this.
Please.
Yeah, and I fully agree about the differentiation thing, and maybe I didn't highlight that because of the time. But when it comes to ITO, we are putting together in ITIDA and in Egypt a specific strategy that we were focusing on 6 specific technologies. That's where we would like to differentiate ourselves. One of them is the IT testing at large. The second one is the mobile application. Third one is cloud computing, and some other technologies that we are building the skills, we are building the necessary number of people working into that. Maybe it's not COBOL, but in some cases I agree with the diversification, but on the same time I agree with the focus and having special skills. For instance, we are building a big testing skills available through all the technologies for IT testing. That's why we wanted to differentiate the country, other than the normal things that maybe it's not, in some cases it's applicable for US companies like localization. Some US companies working on the IT need Arabic language, need to have a localization for their applications and for their industrial systems. We are doing this as well.
Because I would think from an Arabic view, those companies in the U.S. that are supporting, you know, industries, you know, within that sphere of the world, that's a strength that you would bring.
We are working big time in the Arabization or localization. It's not only on the IT system, but on the technology at large. And on the same time, we are trying to differentiate ourselves on a little bit higher on the value chain. For instance, if we are talking again about US-based companies, we have a Microsoft Innovation Center that's mainly working on the language skills, on the contextual language skills. That's based in Cairo in Egypt. It's one of the 3 innovation centers worldwide for Microsoft. IBM has just established 8 months ago a nanotechnology R&D center in Egypt. So yes, we would like to focus in certain technology and be different than the mainstream of SAP or Java or whatever. Yeah.